because that's how I work. That's how I work. Hello? Is this microphone plugged in? I hope it is. Or maybe not. I don't know. Alright, cool. People are here. Hello. So as the title says, I am going to be reading The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. I have my microphone plugged in. The reason why I didn't before is because my tablet doesn't, like, this laptop doesn't have enough USB ports. So, okay, cool. What's my favorite ship in My Hero? Don't got one, but I'll probably say Kiribako because it's great. Anywho, so, why am I reading The Last Unicorn, you might ask? Well, it's a book that I've been wanting to read so much for, like, the past 2 years, and I have the book, but I, for some reason, never got around to it, so I was thinking, hey, why not I read it on stream? Like, I noticed that if you watch Overly Sarcastic Productions, they did, like, a couple of live streams reading stuff, like My Immortal and stuff, so I was like, yeah, why not I read it? I don't expect this stream to last that long, per se, but, I mean, I was just thinking of just reading, like, a couple chapters. I got this neat, found this neat, picture on Google. I think this is, perfect for the theme, I guess I'm going for. I don't know, but, we'll see. Alright. I guess I should just start now, because one thing that I do like when I read is that I don't know if voice act is the right term. I don't even think, I don't know if I'm that good at acting, period. But I do like to, I guess, audiobook-ish the thing. So I was thinking, oh, I'm just going to leave this image right here. This isn't really something to just watch me, like, draw or something. This is really just, I mean, it's just me reading because I'm bored. So what is my favorite and the animation that I've made? The Eurus animation, my, like, 4,000 subscriber special. It's still, like, that video is almost a year old, and it's still my favorite that I've done completely. Alright, facts going on here. I will be reading The Last Unicorn by, Peter S. Beagle. So I guess we should, start. I don't expect this stream to last too long. I don't want it to last too long. I was just thinking maybe I could read, like, the first 2 or 3 chapters, if that's okay. So, let's see. Okay. This is, like, I've already read, like, the first, like, 2 chapters or so. So, we'll see. Wait, school's still open? Mine isn't. Mine is not. But, alright, let's read. Can you hear me well? I hope you can. Alright, man, I'm getting prepared. I indeed just made popcorn. I'm getting a blanket. Alright, let's go. Chapter 1. The unicorn lived in a lilac wood. She lived all alone. She was very old, though she did not know it, and she was no longer the careless color of the sea foam, but rather the color of snow falling on a moonlit night. But her eyes were still cleared and unwearied, and she still moved like a shadow on the sea. She did not look anything like a horned horse, as unicorns are often pictured, being smaller and cloven-hoofed and possessing that oldest, wisest grace that horses have never had, that deer have only been shy, thin intimidation in goats and dancing mockery. Her neck was long and slender, making her head seem smaller than it was, and the mane that fell almost to the middle of her back was soft as dandelion fluff. Blanket in this weather. I was thinking I might, like, stop a couple times just to read the comments, so. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Let me just reread the sentence. Her neck was long and slender, making her head seem smaller than it was, and the mane that fell almost to the middle of her back was as soft as dandelion fluff, and fine as Cirrus? Curus? I don't know. She had pointed ears and thin legs, with feathers of white hairs at her ankles, and the long horn above her eyes shone and shivered with its seashell light even in the deepest midnight. She had killed dragons with it, and healed a king whose poisoned wound could not close, and knocked down ripe chestnuts for bear cubs. Unicorns are a fuck, I can't. Oh no, I swear. She's a giraffe. I guess she is. Unicorns are immortal. It is their nature to live alone in one place, usually a forest where there is a pool clear enough for them to see themselves, for they are a little vain, knowing themselves to be the most beautiful creatures in all the world, and magic besides. They mate very rarely, and no place is more enchanted than one where a unicorn has been born. The last time she has seen another unicorn, what? I'm sorry, I haven't read this in a little while, and Look, this book is kind of old. It's like from the 60s, so it's written in a particular way. I think you guys might know if you read like old books, but hey. The last time she had seen another unicorn, the young virgins, who still came seeking her now and then, had called her in a different tongue. But then she had no idea of months and years and centuries, or even seasons. It was always spring in her forest, because she lived there, and she wandered all day among the great beech trees, keeping watch over the animals that lived in the ground and under bushes, in nests and caves, earths and treetops. Generation after generation, wolves and rabbits alike, they hunted and loved and had children and died, as the unicorn did none of these things. She never grew tired of watching them. I refuse to believe that unicorns aren't giraffes now. Boy, unicorns seem quite lonely. I guess they are. One day it happened when two men with long bows rode through her forest, hunting for deer. The unicorn followed them, moving so warily that not even the horses knew she was near. The sight of men filled her with an old, slow, strange mixture of tenderness and terror. She never let one to see her if she could help it, but she liked to watch them ride by and hear them talking. I mislike the feel of this forest, the elder of the two hunters grumbled. Creatures that live in a unicorn's woods learn a little magic of their own in time, mainly concerned with disappearing. We'll find no game here. Unicorns are long gone, the second man said, if indeed they ever were. This is a forest like any other. Sorry. Then why do the leaves fall? Oh, no, I can't speak. Sorry. Then why do the leaves never fall here, or the snow? I tell you, there is one unicorn left in the world. Good luck to the only. I can't read. I'm so sorry. I tell you, there's one unicorn left in the world. Good luck to the lonely old thing, I say. And as long as it lives in this forest, there won't be a hunter take so much as a titmouse home at his saddle. Ride on, you'll see. I know their ways, unicorns. Actually, giraffes are the idea of unicorns originated. No, it's the rhinoceros. That's where the origins of the unicorn started. Anyway. From books, answered the other. Only from books and tales and songs. Not in the reigns of 3 kings has there been even a whisper of a unicorn seen in this country or any other. You know no more about unicorns than I do, for I've read the same books and heard the same stories, and I've never seen one either. The first hunter was silent for a time, and the second one whistled? Yeah, I read that right. And the second whistled sourly to himself. Then the first said, My great-grandmother saw a unicorn once. She used to tell me about it when I was little. Oh, indeed? And did she capture it with a golden bridle? I don't know. No, she didn't have one. You don't have to have a golden bridle to catch a unicorn. And that part's the fairy tale. You only need to be pure of heart. Yes, the younger man chuckled. Did she ride her unicorn then? Bareback, under the trees, like a nymph in the early days of the world? My great-grandmother was afraid of large animals, said the first hunter. She didn't ride it, but she sat very still, and the unicorn put its head in her lap and fell asleep. My great-grandmother never moved till it woke. Might have been rhinos. It might have been. It might have been. What did it look like? Pliny describes the unicorns as being very ferocious, similar to the rest of its body to a horse, with the head of a deer and the feet of an elephant and the tail of a bear, a deep, bellowing voice, and the single black horn, 2 cubits in length, and the Chinese. My great-grandmother said that the unicorn had a good smell. She never could abide the smell of any beast, or even a cat or cow, let alone a wild thing. But she loved the smell of the unicorn. She began to cry once, telling me about it. Of course, she was a very old woman then, and cried at everything that reminded her of her youth. Oof. Stop screaming D's nuts while Peppermints reads a goddamn story, damn it. Okay, I am thirsty, and I need to get water. I apologize completely. I don't know why I didn't bring water while I'm reading. I'll bring water very quickly. Don't have a breakdown. More than you guys probably already do. Sorry. Alright, I'm back. I got myself some aqua. Alright. Let's go back, I guess. Alright, where was I? Yeah. Let's turn around and hunt somewhere else, the second hunter said abruptly. The unicorn stepped softly into the thicket as they turned their horses, and took up the trail only when they were well ahead of her once more. The men rode in silence until they were nearing the edge of the forest, when the second hunter asked quietly, "Why did they go away, do you think? If there ever were such things." "Who knows? Times change. Would you call this age a good one for unicorns?" "No. But I wonder if any man before us ever thought his time was a good time for unicorns. And it seems to me, now that I have heard stories, but I was sleepy with wine, or I was thinking of something else. Well, no matter. There's light enough yet to hunt. If we hurry, come." They broke out of the woods, kicked their horses to a gallop, and dashed away. But before they were out of sight, the first hunter looked back over his shoulder and called, just as though he could see the unicorn standing in shadow, Stay where you are, poor beast. This is no world for you. Stay in your forest and keep your trees green and your friends long-lived. Pay no mind to young girls, for they never become anything more than silly old women. And good luck to you." H2O, yes, H2O, very important. Very important. The unicorn stood at the edge of the forest and said aloud, "I am the only unicorn there is?" They were the first words she had ever spoken, even to herself, in more than 100 years. That can't be, she thought. She had never minded being alone, never seeing another unicorn, because she had always known that there were others like her in the world, and a unicorn needs no more than that for company. But I would know if all the others were gone. I'd be gone too. Nothing can happen to them that does not happen to me. Her own voice frightened her, and made her want to be running. She moved along the dark paths of her forest, swifting and shining, passing through sudden clearings, unbearably brilliant, with grass or soft the shadow. Beware of everything around her. From the weeds that brushed her ankles to insect quick flickers of blue and silver as the wind lifted the sleeves. Oh, I could never leave this. I never could. Not if I really were the only unicorn in the world. I know how to live here. I know how everything smells and tastes and is. What could I ever search for in the world, except this again? But when she stopped running at last and stood still, listening to the crows and a quarrel, yeah, and a quarrel of squirrels over her head, she wondered, but suppose they are hiding together, somewhere far away. What if they are hiding and waiting for me? From that moment of doubt, there was no peace for her. From the time she first imagined leaving the forest, she could not stand in one place without wanting to be somewhere else. She trotted up and down beside her pool, restless and unhappy. Unicorns are not meant to make choices. She said no, and yes, and no again, day and night, and for the first time she began to feel the minutes crawling over her like worms. Just need water. Peppermint had a stroke, I guess. Yep. I guess I did. I'll continue. Alright, sorry. I will not go, because men have seen no unicorns for a while, does not mean that they have all vanished. Even if it were true, I will not go. I live here. But at last she woke up in the middle of one warm night and said, yes, but now... She hurried through the forest, trying to look at nothing and smell nothing, trying not to feel her earth under her cloven hooves. The animals who moved in the dark, the owls and the foxes and the deer raised their heads as she passed by, but she would not look at them. I must go quickly, she thought, and come back as soon as I can. Maybe I won't have to go very far, but whether I find the others or not, I will come back very soon as I can. Alright. Oh god, is the microphone not working? Oh shiz. Okay, that's not good. Okay, that's not good. Oh crap, that's not good. Okay. Okay, can you? I just want to know because I'm not sure. It works fine? That's okay? Okay. Good. Okay, that's good. Good. Okay. Sorry. Where was I? Did I lose my place? I swear, if I lost my place... Okay, no. Okay, I'm in the right place. Cool. Under the moon, the road that ran from the edge of her forest gleamed like water. But when she stepped out onto it, away from the trees, she felt how hard it was, and how long. She almost turned back then, but instead she took a deep breath of wood's air that still drifted to her, and held it in her mouth like a flower, as long as she could. The long road hurried to nowhere, and had no end. It ran through villages and small towns, flat country and mountains, stony barrens and meadows springing out of stones. But it belonged to none of these, and it never rested anywhere. It rushed the unicorn along, tugging at her feet like a tide, fretting at her, never letting her be quiet and listen to the air, as she was used to doing. Her eyes were always full of dust, and her mane was stiff and heavy with dirt. Time had always passed her by in the forest, but now it was she who passed through time as she traveled. The colors of the trees changed, and the animals along the way grew heavy coats and lost them again. The clouds crept and hurried before the changing winds, and were pink and gold in the sun or livid with storm. Wherever she went, she searched for her people, but she found no trace of them, and in all the tongues she heard spoken along the road, there was not even a word for them any more. Early one morning, about to turn off the road to sleep, she saw a man hoeing in his garden. Knowing that she could hide, she stood still and instead watched him work, until he straightened and saw her. He was fat, and his cheeks jumped with every step he took. "Oh," he said. "Oh, you're beautiful." I want to draw, but at the same time I want to hear the stream. Can't you do both? Maybe, I don't know. She doesn't have a cam. I refuse to, yeah. Alright, where was I? When he tugged off his belt, he made a loop in it, and moved clumsily towards her. The unicorn was more pleased than frightened. The man knew what she was, and what he himself was for, to hoe turnips and pursue something that shone and could run faster than he could. She sidestepped his first lunge as lightly as though the wind of it had blown her out of his reach. I have been hunted with bells and banners in my time, she told him. Men knew that was the only way to hunt me. Yeah, I read that right. Man knew that was the only way to hunt me was to make the chase so wondrous that I could come near to see it. And even so, I was never once captured. My foot must have slipped, said the man. Steady now, you pretty thing. I've never really understood, the unicorn mused as the man picked himself up. What do you dream of doing with me, once you've caught me? The man leaped again, as she slipped away from him like rain. I don't think you know yourselves, she said. E. Oh no. Spam and E everywhere. Oof. Ah, steady now. The man's sweating face was stripped with dirt, and he could hardly get his breath. Pretty, he gasped. You pretty little mare. Mare? The unicorn trumpeted. Yeah, I read that right. Alright. Mare? The unicorn trumpeted the word so shrilly that the man stopped pursuing her and clapped his hands to his ears. Mare? She demanded. I? A horse? Is that what you take me for? Is that what you see? Good horse, the fat man panted. He leaned on the fence and wiped his face. Curry you up, clean you off, you'll be the prettiest old mare anywhere. He reached out with his belt again. Take you to the fair, he said. Come on, horse. A horse, the unicorn said. That's what you were trying to capture. A white mare with her mane full of burrs? As the man approached her, she hooked her horn through his belt. Through the belt, and jerked it out of his grasp, and hurled it across the road into a patch of daisies. A horse am I, she snorted. A horse indeed? For a moment the man was very close to her, and her great eyes stared into his own, which were small and tired and amused. She then turned and fled up the road, running so swiftly that those who saw her exclaimed, Now there's a horse! There's a real horse! One old man said quietly to his wife, That's an Arab horse. I was on a ship with an Arab horse once. Alright. From that time the unicorn avoided towns, even at night, unless there was no way at all to go around them. Even so, there were a few men who gave chase, but always to a wandering white mare, never in the gay and revenant manner proper in the pursuit of a unicorn. Sorry. They came with ropes and nets and baits of sugar lumps, and they whistled and called her Bess and Nellie. Sometimes she would slow down enough to let her horses catch her scent, and then watch as the beast reared and wheeled and ran away with their terrified riders. The horses always knew her. How can it be? She wondered. I suppose I could understand it if... How could it be? She wondered. I suppose I could understand it if men had simply forgotten unicorns, or if they had changed so they hated all unicorns now and tried to kill them when they saw them. But not to see them at all? To look at them and see something else? What do they look like to one another then? What do trees look like to them? Or houses? Or real horses? Or their own children? Let me just tell you, sometimes this book can be like semi-deep, I guess. Like, there are a couple of passages later on which made me go like, okay. Anyway, sometimes she thought if men no longer knew what they were looking at, there may well be unicorns in the world yet, unknown and glad of it. But she knew beyond hope and vanity that men had changed, and the world with them, because the unicorns were gone. Yet she went along the hard road, although each day she wished a little more that she had never left her forest. Then one afternoon the butterfly wobbled out of a breeze and lit on the turn of her horn. He was velvet all over, dark and dusty, with golden spots on his wings, and he was as thin as a flower petal, dancing along her horn. He saluted her with his curling feelers. I am a roving gambler. How do you do? The unicorn laughed for the first time in her travels. Butterfly, what are you doing out on such a windy day? She asked him. You'll take cold and die long before your time. Death takes what man would keep, said the butterfly, and leaves what man would lose. Blow, wind, and crack your cheeks. I warm my hands before the fire of life, and get four-way relief. He glimmered like a scrap of owl light on her horn. Do you know what I am, Butterfly? The unicorn asked hopefully, as he replied, Excellent, well, you're a fishmonger. You're my everything. You are my sunshine. You are old and gray and full of sleep. You're my pickle face. Consumptive Mary Jane. He paused, fluttering his wings against the wind, and added conversationally, Your name is a golden bell hung in my heart. I would break my body to pieces and call you once by your name. Say my name, then, the unicorn begged him. If you know my name, tell it to me. Quarantine is making me turn into a psychopath. Oh, boy. Anyway, I'll continue. Rumpelstiltskin, the butterfly answered happily. Gotcha! You don't get no medal. He jigged and twinkled on her horn, singing, Won't you come home, Bill Bailey? Won't you come home? There once he could not go. Buckle down, Winsaki? Okay. Buckle down, Winsaki. Go and catch a falling star. Clay lies still, but blood's a rover. So I should be called Kill Devil, all the parish over. His eyes were gleaming scarlet in the glow of the unicorn's horn. She sighed and plodded down, both amused and disappointed. It served you right, she told herself. You know better than to expect a butterfly to know your name. All they know are songs and poetry, and anything else they hear. They mean well, but they can't keep things straight. Why would they? And why would they? They die so soon. The butterfly swaggered before her eyes, singing, 1, 2, 3, oh, Lyrie? Whatever. As he whirled, chanting, Not, I'll not, carry on comfort, look down that lonesome road, for oh, what damned minute tells he o'er you dotes, yet doubts, hasten, mirth, and bring with thee a host of furious fancies whereof I am commander, which will be on sale for 3 days, only at bargain summer prices. I love you, oh, the horror, and aroint thee, indeed, truly you've chosen a bad place to be layman, Willow. His voice tinkled in the unicorn's head, like silver money falling. He traveled with her for the rest of the waning day, but when the sun went down and the sky was full of rosy fish, he flew off her horn and hovered in the air before her. I must take the A train, he said. He said politely. I still sometimes look at the comments, okay? I'm just gonna... No, don't trick me again, please. Please don't. Thank you. Let me just put a bookmark on that page. For a reason. Anyway. I must take the A train, he said. The A train, he said politely. Against the clouds she could see his velvet wings were ribbed and ribbed with delicate black veins. Farewell, she said. I hope you hear many more songs. Which was the best way she could think of to say goodbye to a butterfly. But instead of leaving her, he fluttered above her head, looking suddenly less dashing and a little nervous in the blue evening air. Fly away, she urged him. It's too cold for you to be out. But the butterfly still dallied, humming to himself. They ride that horse you call them. What is this? Macedonii, he intoned absent-mindedly, and then very clearly. Unicorn! Old French, unicorne, Latin, unicornis, literally one-horned, Eunice, one, cornu, a horn, a fabulous animal resembling a horse with one horn. Oh, I am a cook as a Captain Bold and the mate of the Nancy Brig. Has anyone here seen Kelly? He strutted joyfully in the air, and the first fireflies blinked around him in wonder and grave doubt. The unicorn was so startled and so happy to hear her name spoken at last, that she overlooked the remark about the horse. Oh, you do know me, she cried, and the breath of her delight blew the butterfly 20 feet away. When he came scrambling back to her, she pleaded, "Butterfly, if you really know who I am, tell me if you have ever seen anyone like me. Tell me which way I must go to find them. Where have they gone?" "Butterfly, butterfly, where shall I hide?" he sang in the fading light. The sweet and bitter fool will presently appear. Christ, that is my love were in my arms, and in my bed again. Should I read r/entitled parents? I don't know. I should read my hero fanfic? I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll just keep... Why do I have the feeling this stream is gonna start something? I'm not sure, man. I'm just reading. Alright, I'll continue. Anyway. He rested on the unicorn's horn once more, and she could feel him trembling. "Please," she said, All I want to know is that there are other unicorns somewhere in the world. Butterfly, tell me that there are still others like me, and I will believe you and go home to my forest. I have been away so long, and I said I would come back soon." "Over the mountains of the moon," the butterfly began, "down the valley of the shadow, ride, boldly ride." He then stopped suddenly and said in a strange voice, No, listen. Don't listen to me. Listen. You can find your people if you are brave. They passed down all the roads long ago, and the Red Bull ran close behind them and covered their footprints. Let nothing you dismay, but don't be half safe. His wings brushed against the unicorn's skin. "The Red Bull?" she asked. "What is the Red Bull?" Well, obviously it's an energy drink. I mean... I love this. Where was I? Okay. "The Red Bull?" she asked. "What is the Red Bull?" The butterfly started to sing, "Follow me down, follow me down, follow me down, follow me down." But then he shook his head wildly and recited, "His firstling bull has majesty, and his horns are horns of a wild ox. With them he shall push the peoples, all of them, to the ends of the earth. Listen, listen, listen quietly." Red Bull gives you wings. It does. It really does give you wings. It does. Yeah. Listen, listen, listen quietly. "I am listening," the unicorn cried. "Where are my people? And what is the Red Bull?" But the butterfly swooped closer to her ear, laughing. "I have nightmares about crawling around on the ground," he sang. "The little dogs, Trey, Blanche, Sue, they bark at me. The little snakes, they hiss at me. The beggars are coming to town. Then at last come the clams." For a moment more he danced in the dusk before her, and he shivered away into the violet shadows by the roadside, chanting indefinitely, "It's you or me, moth, hand to hand to hand to hand." The last the unicorn saw of him was a tiny skittering between the trees, and her eyes must have deceived her, for the night was full of wings now. At least he did recognize me," she thought sadly. "That means something." But she answered herself, "No, that means nothing at all, except that somebody once made up a song about unicorns or a poem. But the Red Bull, what could he have meant by that? Another song, I suppose." Anyway, she walked on slowly, and the night drew close about her. The sky was low and almost pure black, save for the one spot of yellowing silver where the moon paced behind the thick clouds. The unicorn sang softly to herself, a song she had heard a young girl singing in her forest long ago. "Sparrows and cats will live in my shoe, sooner than I will live with you. Fish will come walking out of the sea, sooner than you will come back to me." She did not understand those words, but the song made her think longingly of her home. It seemed to her that she had heard autumn beginning to shake the beech trees the very moment she had stepped out into the road. At last she lay down on the cold grass and fell asleep. Unicorns are the wariest of all... Wariest? Yeah, I read that right. Unicorns are the wariest of all wild things, but they sleep soundly when they sleep. All the same, if she had not been dreaming of home, she would surely have roused at the sound of wheels and jingling coming closer through the night. Yeah, I read that right. Even though the wheels were muffled in rags and the little bells wrapped in wool. But she was very far away, farther than the soft bells could go, and she did not wake. There were 9 wagons, each draped in black, each drawn by a lean black horse, and each bearing barred sides like teeth when the wind blew through the black hangings. The lead wagon was driven by a squat old woman, and it bore signs of its shrouded sides that said in big letters, Mommy Fortuna's Midnight Carnival, and below in smaller print, Creatures of the Night, brought to no light. Alright. When the first dragon, oh, whoops. When the first wagon drew even when the place where, I can't read, I'm having a stroke again, whoops. When the first wagon drew even with the place where the unicorn lay asleep, the old woman suddenly pulled her black horse to a stop. All the other wagons stopped too, and waited silently as the old woman swung herself to the ground with an ugly grace. Gliding close to the unicorn, she peered down at her for a long time, and then said, Well, bless my old husk of heart, and here I thought I'd seen the last of them. Her voice felt a flavor of honey and gunpowder on the air. Honey and gunpowder, ooh. I can't enjoy the book because I keep thinking I have to write an objective summary of it. Okay, I'll give you a little word of advice when it comes to reading anything. Enjoy it. Enjoy the moment, I guess, is the best way I could say. Enjoy the moment. Don't try to memorize every single thing that happened. Because if you enjoy, enjoy the book in the moment, then it's easier to read, honestly. Like, when I read something, I don't really think of it as a huge summary until the very end. And even if I don't remember stuff, like, I could just, search up a summary online, and I'm like, oh, yeah, now I remember that. I guess that's just my advice. I don't know. Anyway. Where was I? Okay. Her voice felt a flavor of honey and gunpowder on the air. If he knew, she said, and she slowly plebly, that's weird, teeth as she smiled. But if he knew, she said, and she showed pebbly, that's a weird word, teeth as she smiled. But I don't think I'll tell him. She looked back at the black wagons and snapped her fingers twice. The drivers of the second and third wagons got down and came towards her. One was short and dark and stony, like herself. The other was a tall, thin man with an air of resolute bewilderment. Man, I love how the book is written sometimes. This resolute bewilderment. Anyway. He wore an old black coat, and his eyes were green. What do you see? The old woman asked the short man. No, I'm sorry, okay, sorry. Good advice. Yeah, that's you're welcome. That's kind of what I do when I just read something, you know. A lot of people think, oh, I have to memorize every single, part of the book. But, you know, I've written my fair share of stories, and, it's definitely it's more funner if you in the moment type things, you know what I mean? But anyway, I'll just continue. I'm sorry I'm late. Welcome. I am doing the exact thing that the title says. Anyway, where was I? What do you see? The old woman asked the short man. What do you see laying there? Dead horse, he answered. No, not dead. Give it to the manticore, or the dragon. His chuckle sounded like matches striking. You're a fool, Mommy Fortuna said to him, then to the other. What about you, wizard? Oh my god. Oh, okay. Seer Thaumaturg. I can read, trust me. Okay. You're a fool, Mommy Fortuna said to him, then to the other. What about you, wizard? Seer Thaumaturg? What do you see with your sorcerer's sight? She joined with the man Ruh, and a ratchety roar of laughter. In a ratchety roar of laughter. but it ended when she saw that the tall man was still staring at the unicorn. "Answer me, you juggler!" she snarled, but the tall man did not turn his head. The old woman turned it for him, reaching out a crab-like hand to yank his chin around. His eyes fell before her yellow stare. "A horse," he muttered. "A white mare." Mommy Fortuna looked at him for a long time. "You're a fool too, magician," she snickered at last. "But a worse fool than Ruch, and a more dangerous one. He lies only out of greed, but you lie out of fear. Or could it be kindness?" The man said nothing, and Mommy Fortuna laughed by herself. "All right," she said. "It's a white mare. I want her for the carnival. The ninth cage is empty." I'll need rope," Ruch said. He was about to turn away, but the old woman stopped her. "The only rope that could hold her," she told him, would be with the cord with which the old gods bound the Fenris wolf, and the ones made of fish's breath, bird spittle, and a woman's beard. The meowing of a cat, and the sinews of a bear, and one thing more. I remember mountain roots. Having one of these elements, nor dwarfs could weave them for us. We'll have to do the best we can with iron bars. I'll put a sleep on her thus." And Mommy Fortuna's hands knitted the night air while she grumbled a few unpleasant words in her throat. Whoops. Thank you for reading me a story tonight, Peppermint. You're welcome. You're welcome. I hope people are at least kind of enjoying the story. I don't know. There was a smell of lightning about the I'm reading that right? There was a smell of lightning about the unicorn when the old woman had finished her spell. "Now cage her," she said to the two men. "She'll sleep till sunrise, whatever racket you make, unless in your unaccustomed stupidity you touch her with your hands. Take the ninth cage to pieces and build it around her, but beware. The hand that so much as brushes her mane turns instantly into the donkey's hoof it deserves to be." Again she gazed mockingly at the tall, thin man. Your little tricks would be even harder for you than they already are, wizard," she said, wheezing. "Get to work, there's not much dark left." When she was well out of earshot, sliding back into the shadow of her wagon. I have never heard this story before. I love it. Thank you. I hope I'm reading it in an entertaining fashion. I don't know, but you're welcome. I've heard that this book is like really good, which is what attracted me to it. Well, it was actually what's so great about that video on The Last Unicorn. 100% recommend that video. It's the video that got me into it, and that made me interested in this book. But anyway, I'll just continue. Where was I? When she was well out of earshot, When she was well out of earshot, sliding back into the shadow of her wagon, as though she had just come out to mark the hour, the man named Ruch spat and said curiously, "Now I wonder what's worrying the old squid. What would it matter if we touched the beast?" The magician answered him in a voice almost too soft to be heard. "The touch of a human hand could wake her out of the deepest sleep. The devil..." Okay, there's no commas, so it's a bit weird. I'm sorry. "The touch of a human hand would wake her out of the deepest sleep. The devil himself could lay on her, and Mommy Fortuna's no devil." "She'd like us to think so," the dark man sneered. "Donkey hooves, gah!" But he thrust his hands deep into his pockets. "Why would the spell be broken? It's just an old white mare." But the magician was walking away towards the last of the black wagons. "Hurry," he said over his shoulder. "It'll be day soon." It took the rest of the night to pull down the ninth cage, bars, and floor and roof, and then to put it back together around the sleeping unicorn. Ruch was tugging at the door to make sure that it was securely locked, when the gray trees in the east boiled over the unicorn to open her eyes. The two men slipped hurriedly away, but the tall magician looked back in time to see the unicorn rise to her feet and stare at the iron bars. her low head swaying like the head of an old white horse. And that is chapter 2. That's chapter 2. I mean, that's chapter 1. I mean, I'm getting to chapter 2. So that's neat. That's pretty neat. So I guess I'm gonna read chapter 2 now. Alright, let's see how long I've been doing this. 44 minutes. Okay, then yeah, I'm just read chapter 2. Because I don't want the stream to last too long, because I don't even think it's that interesting. It's just me reading, honestly. So, anyway, we'll continue. Chapter 2. The 9-black wagon of the midnight carnival seemed smaller by day-night and not menacing at all, but flimsy and fragile as dead leaves. Their draperies were gone, and they were now adorned with sad black banners cut from blankets, the stubby black ribbons that twitched in the breeze. They were arranged strangely in a scrubby field, a pentacle of cages enclosing a triangle, and Mommy Fortuna's wagon lumping in at the center. This cage alone retained its black veil, concealing whatever it contained. Mommy Fortuna was nowhere to be seen. The man named Ruch was leading a straggling crowd of country folk slowly from one cage to the next, commenting somberly on the beast within. This here is a manticore. Man's head, lion's body, tail of a scorpion, captured at midnight eating werewolves to sweeten its breath. Creatures of the night, brought to light, here's the dragon, breathes fire now and then, usually at people who poke it, little boy. Its inside is an inferno. Its inside is an inferno, but its skin is so cold it burns. The dragon speaks 17 languages badly, and is subject to gout. The satyr? Yeah. The satyrs, ladies, keep back. A real troublemaker, captured under curious circumstances revealed to gentlemen only, for a token fee after the show. Creatures of the night. Standing by the unicorn's cage, which was one of the inner 3, the tall magician watched the procession. I'm reading that right. I'm sorry. Sometimes I'm not sure if I. All right. Standing by the unicorn's cage, which was one of the inner 3, the tall magician watched the procession proceeding around the pentacle. I shouldn't be here, he said to the unicorn. The old woman warned me to stay away from you. He chuckled pleasantly. She has mocked me from the day I joined her, but I have made her nervous all the time. The unicorn hardly heard him. She turned and turned in her prison, her body shrinking from the touch of iron bars all around her. No creature of man's night loves cold iron, and while the unicorn could endure its presence, the murderous smell of it seemed to turn her bones to sand and her blood to rain. The bars of her cage must have had some sort of spell on them, for they never captured, whispering evilly to one another in clawed, pattering voices. The heavy lock giggled and whined like a mad monkey. Anyway. Tell me what you see, said the magician, as Mommy Fortuna says... Tell me what you see, said the magician, as Mommy Fortuna had said to him. Look for your fellow legends, and tell me what you see. Ruch's iron voice came clanging through the wan afternoon. Gatekeeper of the underworld, 3 heads and a healthy coat of vipers, as you can see, last seen above ground in the time of Hercules, who dragged him up under one arm. But we lured him to light again with promises of a better life. Cerberus! Look at those 6 cheated red eyes. You may look into them again one day. This way to the Midgar serpent. This way! The unicorn stared through the bars at the animals in the cage. Her eyes were wide with disbelief. It's only a dog, she whispered. It's a hungry, unhappy dog with only 1 head, and hardly any coat at all. The poor thing. How could they ever take it for Cerberus? Are they blind? Look again, the magician said. And the satyr? I'm just gonna pronounce it satyr. Right. And the satyr, the unicorn continued, the satyr is an ape, an old ape with a twisted foot. The dragon is a crocodile, much more likely to breathe fish than fire. And the manticore is a lion, a perfectly good lion, but no more monstrous than the others. I don't understand. It's got the whole world in its coils. Ruth was droning, and once more the magician said, "Look again." Then, as though her eyes were getting used to darkness, the unicorn began to perceive the second figure in each cage. They loomed hugely over the captives of the midnight carnival, and yet they were joined to them. Stormy dreams sprung from a grain of truth. So there was a manticorn, femine? I'm going to pronounce it famine. I don't know how it's pronounced. Old words. I'm sorry. So there was a manticorn, famine-eyed, slobber-mouthed, roaring, curving his deadly tail over his back until the poisoned spine lolled and nodded just above his ears. And there was a lion too. Tiny and absurd by comparison. Yet they were the same creature. The unicorn stamped in wonder. Was it so in all the other cages? The shadow dragon opened its mouth and hissed harmless fire to make the gaspers gasp and cringe, while hell's snake-furred watchdog howled triple dooms and devastations down on his betrayers, and the satyr limped leering to the bars and beckoned young girls to impossible delights right there in public. As for the crocodile, the ape, and the sad dog, they faded steadily before the marvelous phantoms until they were only shadows themselves, even to the unicorn's undeceived eyes. If any of you are confused by all of that, basically, the magical animals are just normal animals, but, magic mumbo-jumbo makes it seem like they're the animals they are. That's what it means. And that, basically, the real animal is like nothing in comparison to the magical version of them, even though they're literally the same thing. It's just like an illusion thing. I don't know. I find that pretty neat. One thing I do know about this book is that it has this, I don't know if message, but it kind of has this whole thing about, it has this whole thing about, like, truth and fiction and stuff, so, yeah. And anyway, I'll just keep continuing, I don't know. Reading while a crime scene is happening in the chat. See, I'm just ignoring the chat. I'm just reading, dude. I'm just reading. I'm ignoring the chat all I can. Alright, I learned that quickly from these streams. Just ignore the chat. Anyway, I'll continue. Yeah. This is a strange sorcery, she said softly. There's more meaning than magic to this. The magician laughed with pleasure and great relief. Well said indeed. I knew the old whore wouldn't dazzle you with her 2-penny spells. His voice grew hard and secret. She's made her third mistake now, he said, and that's at least two too many for a tired old trickster like herself. The time draws near. Let me just move the mic a little bit. Right. The time draws near, Ruch said, telling the crowd, as though he had overheard the magician. Ragnarok! On the day when the gods fall, the serpent of Midgar will split a storm of venom at great Thor himself, till he tumbles over like a poisoned fly. And so he waits for Judgment Day, and dreams about the part he'll play. It may be so, I couldn't say. Creatures of the night brought to light. The cage was filled with snake, but there was no head to it, and no tail. Nothing but a wave of tarnished darkness rolling from one end of the cage to the other, leaving no room or anything, but its own thunderous breathing. Only the unicorn saw, coiled in a corner, a baleful bow, or boa? I think it's boa. Coiled in a corner, a baleful boa, brooding perhaps over its own judgment on the midnight carnival, but it was tiny and dim as the ghost of a worm in the serpent's shadow. A wandering gawk stuck up his head and demanded of Ruch, "If this big snake can be coiled around the world, as you say, how come you have it in a piece? How come you have a piece of it in your wagon? And if it can shatter the sea just by stretching of itself, what's to keep it from crawling off, wearing your whole show like a necklace?" There were murmurs of agreement, and some of the murmurs began to back wearily away. "I'm glad you asked me that, friend," Ruff said with a scowl. "It just so happens that the Midgard serpents exist in like another space from ours, another dimension. Normally, therefore, he is invisible, but dragged into our world, as Thor hooked him once. He shows clear as lightning, which also visits us from somewhere else, where it might look quite different. And naturally, he might turn nasty if he knew that a bit of his tummy slack was on view daily and Sundays. Daily and Sundays. Okay, that makes no sense. Was on view daily and Sundays in Mommy Fortuna's midnight carnival. But he don't know, and he's got other things to think about than what becomes of his belly button, and we take our chances, as do you all, on his continued tranquility." He rolled and stretched the last word like dough, and his hearers laughed carefully. "Spells of seeming," the unicorn said. "She cannot make things." "Nor truly change them," added the magician. "Her shabby skills lies in the skies." So has this become a role play? I mean, I guess. I'm not sure. I maybe. Beats me. I'll just continue. Move the water a little bit. Okay. "Nor truly change them," added the magician. "Her shabby skills lies in disguise, and even that knack would be beyond her, if it weren't for the eagerness of those gulls, those marks, to believe whatever comes easiest. She can't turn cream into butter, but she can give a lion the semblance of a manticore to eyes that but she can give a lion the semblance of a manticore to eyes that want to see a manticore there. Eyes that would take a real manticore for a lion, a dragon for a wizard, and a Midgard serpent for an earthquake, and a unicorn for a white mare." The unicorn halted in her slow, desperate round of the cage, realizing for the first time that the magician understood her speech. He smiled, and she saw that his face was frighteningly young for a grown man, untraveled by time, unvisited by grief or wisdom. "I know you," he said. The bars whispered wickedly between them. Ruch was leading the crowd to the inner cages now. The unicorn asked the tall man, "Who are you?" "I am called Schmendrick, yeah, I'm reading that right. I am called Schmendrick the magician," he answered. "You won't have heard of me." Can I tell you that this is from what I've read so far, this scene right here is, the best, my favorite scene so far? With the magician explaining how the magic works, and then being all a unicorn, and she's like, "Wait, you know me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do. It's great. I love it. It's my favorite scene so far in this book. It's great." Anyway, where was I? Okay. "I am called Schmendrick the magician," he answered. "You won't have heard of me." The unicorn came very near to explaining that it was hardly for her to have heard of one wizard or another, but something sad and valiant in his voice kept her from it. The magician said, I entertain the sightseers as they gather for the show. Miniature magic, sleight of hand, flowers to flags and flags to fish, all accompanied by a persuasive patter and a suggestion that I could work more ominous wonders if I chose. It's not much of a job, but I've had worse, and I'll have a better one day. This is not the end." But the sound of his voice made the unicorn feel as though she were trapped forever. Once more she began pacing her cage, moving to keep her heart from bursting with terror of being closed in. Roch was standing before the cage that contained nothing but a small brown spider weaving a modest web across the bars. Yeah, I'm reading it. I am so confused. And I just got here. If you're asking about the chat, yeah, no, I'm paying no mind. If you're asking about me, unicorn meta magician who finally sees her as a unicorn instead of a horse because all other humans sees her as a horse. I'm just trying to listen to the story, mate. Same, bro. Like, I apologize. I can't control what happens in the comments. Sorry. Anyway, I'll continue. Anyway, where was I? Okay. Alright. Roch was standing before the cage that contained nothing but a small brown spider weaving a modest web across the bars. "Arachne of Lydia," he told the crowd, "guaranteed the greatest weaver in the world. Her fate's the proof of it. She had the bad luck to defeat the goddess Athena in the weaving contest. Athena was a sore loser, and Arachne is now a spider, creating only for Mommy Fortuna's midnight carnival by special arrangement. Warp of snow and woof of flame, and never any two the same. Arachne." Strung on the loom of the iron bars, the web was very simple and almost colorless, except for an occasional rainbow shiver when the spider strutted out on it to put the thread right. But it drew the onlooker's eyes, and the unicorn's eyes as well, back and forth and steadily deeper, until they seemed to be looking down into the great rifts in the world. Black fissures? Sure. Black fissures that widened remorselessly, and yet could not fall into pieces as long as Arachne's web held the world together. The unicorn shook herself free with a sigh. She saw the real web again. It was very simple, and almost colorless. "It isn't like the others," she said. No, Schmendrick agreed grudgingly. "But there's no credit due to Mommy Fortuna for that. You see, the spider believes. She sees she sees those cats cradle herself and thinks them her own work. Belief makes all the difference to magic like Mommy Fortuna's. Why, if that troop of witlings withdrew their wonder, there'd be nothing left of her witchery but the sound of a spider weeping, and no one would hear it." What is going on in the chat? I don't know. I'm just reading, dude. I'm just reading. Anyway, so I'm assuming from what it's saying, like, the illusion magic only works if the people actually believe what they're seeing is true. Which, again, from what I've heard of this book, it has a huge, like, fiction, reality message thingy. I like it. I like it a lot. Anyway, I'll just go back. Turn page. The unicorn did not want to look into the web again. "No, stop!" "Sorry, my friend texted me." "No, stop, not now." "No, stop!" "I apologize." "Save this chat." No, save yourselves. I'm reading. "The chat has descended into the deepest parts of hell." It really has. It really has. I mean, I'm just reading a story, alright? With that, I should continue reading. The unicorn did not want to look into the web again. She glanced at the cage closest to her own, and suddenly felt the breath in her body turn to cold iron. There sat an oaken perch, a creature with the body of a great bronze bird and a hag's face, clenched as deadly as talons, in which she gripped the wood. She had shaggy round ears of a bear, but down her scaly shoulders, mingling with the bright knives of her plumage, there fell hair of color moonlight, thick and youthful around the hating human face. She glittered, But to look at her was to feel the light going out of the sky. Catching sight of the unicorn, she made a queer sound like a hiss and a chuckle together. The unicorn said quietly, "This one is real. This is the harpy Celiano? Celiano. Celiano. I'm gonna pronounce it like that. Yeah, I'm just gonna pronounce it like that. This one is real. This is the harpy Celiano." Schmendrick's face had gone the color of oatmeal. "The old woman caught her by chance," he whispered, "asleep as she took you. But it was an ill fortune, and they both know it. Mommy Fortuna's craft is just sure enough to hold the monster, but its mere presence is wearing all of her spells so thin that in little time she won't have power enough to fry an egg. She would have never done it, never meddled with a real harpy, a real unicorn. The truth melts her magic always, but she cannot keep from trying to make it serve her. But this time, yeah, sister of the rainbow, believe it or not," they heard Ruch braying the awed onlookers. "Her name means the Dark One, the one whose wings blacken the sky before a storm. She and her two secret sisters nearly starved the king Phineas. Nearly starved the king Phineas to death by snatching and befouling his food before he could eat it. But the sons of the North Wind had made them quit that. Didn't they, my beauty?" The harpy made no sound, and Ruch grinned like a cage himself. "She put a fiercer fight than all the others put together," he went on, "when it was like trying to bind all hell with a hair. But Mommy Fortuna's powers are great enough even for that. Creatures of the night, brought by light. Polly want a cracker?" Polly want a cracker? Sure. Few in the crowd laughed. The harpy's talons tightened on her perch until the wood cried out. "You'll need to be freed when she frees herself," the magician said. She mustn't catch you caged." "I dare not touch the iron," the unicorn replied. "My horn could open the lock, but I cannot reach it. I cannot get out." She was trembling with horror of the harpy, but her voice was quite calm. Schmendrick the magician drew himself up several inches taller than the unicorn would have thought possible. "Fear nothing," he began grandly. "For all my air of mystery, I have a feeling heart." But he was interrupted by the approach of Ruch and his followers, grown quieter than the grubby gang who had giggled at the manticore. Phineas and Ferb, yes. I'm still gonna stay because of the story. Thank you so much. I apologize for whatever's happening in the comments. Anyway. The magician fled, calling back softly, "Don't be afraid. Schmendrick is with you. Do nothing until you hear from me." His voice drifted to the unicorn, so faint and lonely that she was not sure whether she actually heard it or only felt it brush against her. It was growing dark. The crowd stood in front of her cage, peering at her with a strange shyness. Ruch said, "The unicorn," and stepped aside. She heard hearts bounce, tears brewing, and breath going backwards. But nobody said a word. By sorrow and loss and sweetness in their faces, she knew that they had recognized her, and she had accepted their hunger as her homage. She thought of the hunter's great-grandmother, and wondered what it must be like to grow old, and to cry. "Most shows," said Ruch after a time, "would end here, for what they could possibly present after a... Most shows," said Ruch after a time, "would end here, but for what could they possibly present after a genuine unicorn? But Mommy Fortuna's midnight carnival holds up one more mystery yet, a demon more destructive than the dragon, more monstrous than the manticore, more hideous than the harpy, and certainly more universal than the unicorn." He waved his hand back to the last wagon, and the black hanging began to wriggle open, though there was no one pulling them. "Behold her!" Ruch cried. "Behold the last! The very end! Behold Ellie!" Inside the cage, it was darker than the evening. The cold stirred behind the bars like a living thing. Something moved in the cold, and the unicorn saw Ellie, an old, bony, ragged woman who crouched in the cage, rocking and warming herself before a fire that was not there. She looked so frail that the weight of darkness could have crushed her, and so helpless and alone that the watchers could have rushed forward in pity to free her. Instead, they began to back silently away, for all the world as though Ellie were stalking them. But she was not even looking at them. She sat in the dark and creaked a song to herself in a voice that sounded like a saw going through a tree, and like a tree getting ready to fall. What is plucked will ever grow again. What is slain lives on. What is stolen will remain. What is gone is gone. Let me just read the comments a little bit. The chat has gone silent. Sweet. Okay, Peppermint, I swear if you don't get 100k by this week, I'm gonna yell "freak you all" louder than the present mic. Okay. She deserves more subscribers than anyone I know. Thank you. Alright, I'll continue. She doesn't look like much, does she? Russ said, but no hero can stand before her. No god can wrestle her down. No magic can keep her out, or in, for she's no prisoner of ours. Even while we exhibit her here, she is walking among you, touching and taking, for Ellie is old age. The cold of the cage reached out to the unicorn. And this is where I left off, alright? Sorry. The cold of the cage reached out to the unicorn, and wherever it touched her, she grew lame and feebled. She felt herself withering, loosening, felt her beauty leaving her with her breath. Ugliness swung from her mane, dragged down her head, stripped her tail, gaunted her body, ate up her coat, and ravaged her mind with the remembrance of what she had once been. Somewhere nearby, the harpy made her low, eager sound, but the unicorn would gladly have huddled in the shadow of her bronze wings to hide from this last demon. Ellie's song sawed away at her heart. What is sea-born dies on land. Soft is trod upon. What is given burns the hand. What is gone is gone. The show was over. The crowd was stealing away. No one alone, but in couples and fews and severals, strangers holding strangers' hand, looking back often to see if Ellie were following. Ruh had plaintively. Okay. Ruh called plaintively, Don't the gentlemen wait to hear the story about the satyr?" And scent of sour yelled of laughter chasing their slow flight. Okay. Creatures of the night, brought to light! They struggled through the stiffening air, past the unicorn's cage, and on away, with Ruh laughing, yapping them home, and Ellie still singing. "This is an illusion," the unicorn told herself. "This is an illusion. How someone raised a head heavy with death to stare deep into the dark of the last cage and see, not old age, but Mommy Fortuna herself, stretching and snickering and clambering to the ground with her old eerie ease. And the unicorn knew that she had not become mortal and ugly at all, but she did not feel beautiful again. Perhaps that was an illusion too, she thought wearily. "I enjoyed that," Mommy Fortuna said to Ruh. "I always do. I guess I'm just a stage struck at heart." "You better check on that damn harpy," Ruh said. "I could feel her working loose this time. It was like I was a rope holding her, and she was untying me." He shuddered and lowered his voice. "Get rid of her," he said hoarsely, before she scatters us across the sky like bloody clouds. "She thinks about it all the time. I can feel her thinking about it." "Fool, be still!" The witch's own voice was fierce with fear. I could turn her into wind if she escapes, or into snow, or into 7 notes of music. But I chose to keep her. No other witch in the world holds a harpy captive, and no one ever will. I choose to keep her if I could do it only by feeding her a piece of your liver every day." "Ah, that's nice," Ruh said. He slid it away from her. What if she only wanted your liver?" he demanded. "What would you do then?" Peppermint is better than anyone I know. Thank you. I just came for the story. I'm just reading the story. Anyway. It was like, blah, blah, okay. Yeah. What would you, like, if you want, okay. Oh, that's nice, Ruth said. He slid it away from her. What if she only wanted your liver? He demanded. What would you do then? Thank you for everything. You're welcome. Feed her yours anyway, Mommy Fortuna said. She wouldn't know the difference. Harpies aren't bright. Alone in the moonlight, the old woman glided from cage to cage, rattling locks and prodding her enchantments as a housewife squeezes melons in the market. When she came to the harpy's cage, the monster made a sound as shrill as a spear, and spread the horrid glory of its wings. For a moment it seemed to the unicorn that the bars of the cage began to wriggle and run like rain, but Mommy Fortuna crackled her twiggy fingers, and the bars were iron again, and the harpy sank down on its perch, waiting. Not yet, the witch said. Not yet. They stared at each other with the same eyes. Mommy Fortuna said, You're mine. If you kill me, you're mine. The harpy did not move, but a cloud put out the moon. Not yet, Mommy Fortuna said, and she turned towards the unicorn's cage. Well, she said in her sweet, smoky voice, I had frightened you for a little while, didn't I? She laughed with the sound of little snakes hurrying through mud, and strolled closer. Whatever your friend the magician may say, she went on, I must have some small art after all. To trick a unicorn into believing herself old and foul, that takes certain skill, I'd say. And is it a two-penny spell? I can't read, I'm sorry. And is it a two-penny spell that holds the Dark One prisoner? I need water. Anyway. And is it a two-penny spell that holds the Dark One prisoner? No other, the unicorn replied. Do not boast, old woman. Your death sits in that cage and hears you. Yes, Mommy Fortuna said calmly, but at least I know where it is. You were out on the road hunting for your own death. She laughed again. And I know where that one is too. But I spared you I can't read. Also, the story is going nice, Peppermint. Thank you. Hey! Alright. Let me just repeat that entire paragraph, because, Yes, Mommy Fortuna said calmly, but at least I know where it is. You were out on the road hunting for your own death. She laughed again. And I know where that one is, too, but I spared you the finding of it, and you should be grateful for that. Forgetting where she was, the unicorn pressed forward against the bars. They hurt her, but she did not draw back. The Red Bull, she said. Where can I find the Red Bull? Mommy Fortuna stepped close to the cage. The Red Bull of King Haggard, she muttered. So you know of the bull. She showed two of her teeth. Well, he'll not have you, she said. You belong to me. The unicorn shook her head. You know better, she said gently. Free the harpy while there is time, and set me free as well. Keep your poor shadows, but if you will, keep your poor shadows if you will, but let us go. The witch's stagnant eyes blazed up so savagely bright, and the ragged company of the Luna moths, off to the night's reveal, fluttered straight into them and sizzled into snowy ashes. I'd quit show business first, she snarled, trudging through eternity, hauling my homemade horrors. Do you think that was my dream when I was young and evil? Do you think I chose this major magic, sprung of stupidity? Because I never knew the true witchery. I play tricks with dogs and monkeys because I cannot touch the grass. But I know the difference. And now you ask me to give up the sight of you, the presence of your power. I told Ruch I'd feed his liver to the harpy if I had to, so I would. And to keep you, I'd take your friend Schmendrick, and She'd raised herself to gibberish, and at last to into silence. Speaking of livers, the unicorn said, real magic can never be made by offering up to one else's liver. You must tear out your own, and not expect it to get it back. The true witches know that. Sorry. A few grains of sand rustled down Mommy Fortuna's cheeks as she stared at the unicorn. All witches weep like that. So I guess witches cry sand, according to the story. What do you prefer, kids? Sandwiches or sandwiches? Anyway. A few grains of sand rustled down Mommy Fortuna's cheeks as she stared at the unicorn. All witches weep like that. She turned and walked swiftly towards her wagon, but suddenly she turned again and grinned her rubby grin. But I tricked you twice anyway, she said. Did you really think that those gogglers knew you for yourself without any help from me? No, I had to give you an aspect they could understand. No, I had to give you an aspect they could understand, and a horn they could see. These days it takes a cheap carnival witch to make folk recognize a real unicorn. You'd do much better if you stay with me and be false. For in this whole world only the Red Bull will know you when he sees you. She disappeared into her wagon, and the harpy let the moon come out again. Oh, and that's the end of chapter 2. Okay, let me just check for a moment how long this stream has been going. Because, again, I don't want it to last too long. Let's see. 81 minutes. Okay, I've been doing this for an hour now. Question. Should I read chapter 3? Or should I, do you think this is good enough to stop for the day? Actually, how many chapters does this book have? I need to wonder. I never actually bothered to... Does it even have a table of contents? I actually don't think it does. Oh, it does not. Alright. So, just a question. Do you want me to continue? Or do you want me to stop for now? Because I'm not sure. Just for one more chapter. At least. Just wondering. 14 chapters, okay. Read more? You want me to read more? Okay, sure. Let me just see how long chapter 3 is. Let me just see. Oh boy, chapter 3 is a long one. Okay, chapter 3 is a long one. Alright. The chapter 3 is going to be the last one, because I don't want the stream to be, like, too long. So. Alright, let's go. Chapter 3. Shmandrake came back a little before dawn, slipping between cages as silently as water. Only the harpy made a sound as he went by. I couldn't get away any sooner, he told the unicorn. She set Roch into watching me, and he hardly ever sleeps. But I asked him a riddle, and it always takes him all night to solve riddles. Next time I'll tell him a joke and keep him busy for a week. The unicorn was gray and still. There's magic on me, she said. Why did you not tell me? I thought you knew, the unicorn answered gently. After all, didn't you wonder how it could be that they recognized you? He then smiled, which made him look a little older. No, of course not. You never would wonder about that. There has never been a spell on me before, the unicorn said. She shivered long and deep. There has never been a world in which I was not known. I know exactly how you feel, Shmandrake said eagerly. The unicorn looked down at him out of the dark, endless eyes. He smiled nervously and looked at his hands. It's a rare man. I can't. Having a stroke again. It's a rare man who is taken for what he truly is, he said. There is much misjudgment in the world. Now I knew you for a unicorn when I first saw you, and I know that I am your friend. Yet you could take me for a clown, or a clod, or a betrayer, and so must I be if you see me so. The magic on you is only magic that will vanish as soon as you are free. But the enchantment of errors that I can't read. But the enchantment of errors that you put on me, I must wear forever in your eyes. We are not always what we seem, and hardly what we dream. Still I have read or heard it sung that unicorns when time was young. Yeah, I read that right. But could tell the difference but could tell the difference twixt the two. The false shining and the true. You know what? Maybe I should just read the entire paragraph again, because this whole thing's giving me a stroke. Oh boy. What time am I going to read tomorrow? Not sure. Maybe the same time, honestly. I'm just going to reread that entire part because, that gave me a stroke. Oof. It's a rare man who is taken for what he truly is, he said. There is much misjudgment in the world. Now, I knew you for a unicorn when I first saw you, and I know that I am your friend. Yet, you take me for a clown, or a clod, or a betrayer, and so I must be if you see me so. The magic on you is only magic that will vanish as soon as you are free, but the enchantment of error that you put on me, I must wear forever in your eyes. We are not always what we seem, and hardly ever what we dream. Still I have read or heard it sung that unicorns when time was young could tell the difference twixt the two. The false shining and the true. The lips laugh and the hearts rue. So basically what he's saying is, the magic you have is just magic that will vanish, that makes people think you're a unicorn. Meanwhile, what you see me as is what I am, at least to you, or something like that. Again, it's the whole thing about fiction and reality, which is, what attracted me so much to this book anyway, so I like it when the book goes deep like that. Anyway. Where was I? Okay. His voice lifted as the sky grew lighter, and for a moment the unicorn could not hear the bars whining, or the soft ringing of the harpy's wings. I think you are my friend, she said. Will you help me? If not you, no one, the magician answered. You are my last chance. Alright. One by one, the sad beasts of the midnight carnival came whimpering, sneezing, and stuttering awake. One had been dreaming of rocks and bugs and tender leaves, another of bounding through high, hot grass, a third of mud and blood, and one had dreamed of a hand scratching the lonely place behind its ears. Only the harpy had not slept, and now she sat staring into the sun without blinking. Schmendrick said, If she frees herself first, we are lost. They heard Ruch's voice nearby. That voice always sounded nearby, calling, Schmendrick! Hey, Schmendrick, I got it! It's a coffee pot, right? The magician began to move slowly away. Tonight, he murmured to the unicorn. Trust me till dawn. And gone was a flap of and was gone with a flap and a scramble, seeming as before to leave part of himself behind. Ruch loped by the cage a moment later, all deadly economy. Hidden in her black wabbin, Mommy Fortuna grumbled Ellie's song to herself. Here is there, and high is low, all may be undone. What is true, no two men know. What is gone is gone. I'll continue. Soon a new catch of spectators began to come, sauntering up to see the show. Ruch called them in, crying, Creatures of the night, like an iron parrot, and Schmendrick stood on a box and did tricks. The unicorn watched him with great interest and the growing uncertainty, not of his heart but of his craft. He made an entire show out of a sow's ear, turned a sermon into a stone. Turned a sermon into a stone, a glass of water into a handful of water, a five of spades into a 12 of spades, and a rabbit into a goldfish that drowned. Each time he conjured up confusion, he glanced quickly at the unicorn with eyes that said, Oh, but you know what I really did. Once he changed the dead rose into it. Once he changed the dead rose into a steed. The unicorn liked that, even though it turned out to be a radish seed. The show began again. Once more, Ruch led the crowd from one of Mommy Fortuna's poor fables to another. The dragon blazed. Cerberus howled for hell to come and help him, and the satyr tempted women until they wept. They squinted and pointed at the manticore's yellow tusks and swollen sting, grew still at the thought of the midnight serpent, and wondered at Arachne's new web, which was like a fisherman's net with a dripping moon on it. Each of them took it for a real web, but only the spider believed that it had held a real moon. That poor spider. That poor spider. This time, Ruch did not tell the story of King Phineas and the Argonauts. Sure. Indeed, he hurried his sightseers past the harpy's cage as quickly as he could, gabbling only her name and the meaning of it. The harpy smiled. Nobody saw her smile except the unicorn, and she wished she had chanced to be looking somewhere else at the time. When they looked in the front of her cage, gazing silently at her, the unicorn thought bitterly, "Their eyes are so sad. How much sadder would they be, I wonder, if the spell that disguises me dissolved and they were left staring at a common white mare? The witch is right. Not one would know me." But then a soft voice, rather like the voice of Schmendrick the magician, said inside her, "But their eyes are so sad." And then Ruch shrieked, "Behold the very end!" And the black hanging slithered back to reveal Ellie, grumbling in the cold and darkness. The unicorn felt the same helpless fear of growing old, and set the crowd to sight. Even though she knew that it was only Mommy Fortuna in the cage, she thought, "The witch only knows more than she knows she knows." Night came quickly, perhaps because the harpies hurried on it. Just drink some water. Alright. Night came quickly, perhaps because the harpy hurried on it. The sun sank into dirty clouds like a stone unto the sea, and with about as much chance of rising again, there was no moon or any stars. Mommy Fortuna made her gliding rounds of the cage. The harpy did not move when she drew near, and that made the old woman stand and stare at her for a long time. "Not yet," she muttered at last. "Not yet." But her voice was weary and doubtful. She peered briefly at the unicorn, her eyes with a stir of yellow in a greasy gloom. "Well, one day more," she said in a cracking sigh, and turned away again. There was no sound in the carnival after she was gone. All the beasts were asleep, save the spider, who wove, and the harpy, who waited. Yet the night creaked tighter and tighter until the unicorn expected it to split wide open, ripping a seam down the sky to reveal more bars. She thought, "Where is the magician?" At last he came hurrying through the silence, spinning and dancing like a cat in the cold, stumbling over shadows. When he reached the unicorn's cage, he made a joyful bow to her and said proudly, "Schmendrick is with you." In the cage nearest to hers, the unicorn heard the edge shivering of bronze. "I think we have very little time," she said. "Can you truly set me free?" The tall man smiled. Even in his pale, solemn fingers grew merry. Sorry. Your capture was the last, and the taking of the harpy was the second, because you are both real, and Mommy Fortuna could no more make you hers. Is he talking? Yeah, he's talking. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Whoopsie. The tall man smiled, and even his pale, solemn fingers grew merry. I told you that the witch has made great mistakes. Your capture was the last, and taking the harpy the second, because you are both real, and Mommy Fortuna can no more make you hers, and she can make her the winter a day longer. But to take me for a mountebank like herself, that was her first and fatal folly, for I too am real, I am Schmendrick the magician, and at last the red-hot Swamis. I am older than I look. Where's the other? The unicorn asked. Schmendrick was pushing back his sleeves. Don't worry about Ruch. I asked him another riddle. One he has no answer. He may never move again. He spoke 3 angled words. Okay. He's angled? That's angeled. Yeah, angeled. Angle, angel. I need go. Bye. Okay. Is that okay? He spoke 3 angeled words and snapped his fingers. The cage disappeared. The unicorn found herself standing in the grove of trees, orange and lemon, pear and pomegranate, almond, what? Aldman, and Acadia, whatever, with a soft spring earth underneath her feet and the sky growing over her. Her heart turned light as smoke, and she gathered up the strength of her body for a great bound to the sweet night. But she let the leap drift out of her, untaken, for she knew, although she could not see them, that the bars were still there. She was too old to not to know. I'm sorry, Schmendrick said, somewhere in the dark. I would have liked it to be that spell that freed you. Now he sang something cold and low, and the strange trees blew away like dandelion down. This is a source. Sure. Yeah, there we go. I read that right. Anyway, where was I? Okay. Now he sang cold and low, and the strange trees blew away like dandelion down. This is a sure spell, he said. The bars are now as brittle as old cheese, and I can crumble and scatter so. He then gasped and snatched his hands away. Each long finger was dripping blood. I must have gotten the accent wrong, he said. He said hoarsely. Oh, the poor man, he can't do magic correctly. Basically what happened is that he tried making the cage disappear. It didn't, it looks like it disappeared, but it's still there. He tried another spell, and I guess his hands are bleeding. Whoopsie. Yeah. He then gasped and snatched his hands away. Each long finger was dripping blood. I must have gotten the accent wrong, he said hoarsely. He hid his hands in his cloak and tried to make his voice light. It comes, it goes. A scratching of flinty phrases this time, and Schmendrick's bloody hands flickered across the sky. Something gray and grinning, something like a bear, but bigger than a bear, something that chuckled muddily, came limping from somewhere, eager to crack the cage like a nut and pick out bits of the unicorn's flesh with its claws. Schmendrick ordered it back into the night, but it wouldn't go. The unicorn backed into a corner and lowered her head, but the harpy steered softly in her cage. Ringing, and the gray shape turned what must have been its head, and saw her. It made a foggy, globbering sound of terror and was gone. The magician cursed and shivered. He said, I called him up one other time, long ago, and I couldn't handle him then either. Now we owe our lives to the harpy, and she may yet come to call for them before the sun rises. He stood silent, twisting his wounded fingers, waiting for the unicorn to speak. I'll try once more, he said finally. Shall I try once more? Backing away intensifies. The unicorn thought that she could see the night boiling where the gray thing had been. Yes, she said. Schmendrick took a deep breath, spat 3 times, and spoke words that sounded like bells ringing under the sea. He scattered a handful of powder over the spittle, and smiled triumphantly as it puffed up in a single silent flash of green. And when the light had faded, he said 3 more words. They were like the noise bees might make buzzing on the moon. The cage had begun to grow smaller. The unicorn could not see the bars moving, but each time Schmendrick said, "Ah, no!" she had less room in which to stand. Already she could not turn around. The bars were drawing in, pitiless as the tide or the morning, and they could shear through her until they surrounded her heart, which they could keep a prisoner forever. She had not cried out when the creature Schmendrick had summoned came, grinning, towards her, but now she had made a sound. It was small and small and despairing, but not yet yielding. Schmendrick stopped the bars, though she never knew how. If he spoke any magic, she had not heard it. But the cage stopped shrinking a breath before the bar. If he spoke any magic, she had not heard it. But the cage stopped shrinking a breath before the bars touched her body. She could feel them all the same, each one like a little cold wind meowing with hunger, but they could not reach her. Alright, sorry. Where was I? Okay. The magician's arms fell to his sides. I dare no more, he said heavily. The next time I might not be able... His voice trailed miserably away, and his eyes were defeated as his hands. The witch made no mistake in me, he said. Try again, the unicorn said. You are my friend, try again. But Schmendrick, smiling bitterly, was fumbled through his pockets in search of something that clicked and clinked. I knew it would come to this, he muttered. I dreamed it differently, but I knew. He brought out a ring from which it dangled several rusty keys. You deserve the services of a great wizard, he said to the unicorn, but I'm afraid you'll have to be glad of the aid of a second-rate pickpocket. Unicorns know not of need, or shame, or doubt, or debt, but mortals, as you may have noticed, take what they can get. And Rook can only concentrate on one thing at a time. Just get some water. Alright. I'll continue. Yes. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Unicorns know not of need, or shame, or doubt, or debt, but mortals, as you may have noticed, take what they can get, and Rook can only concentrate on one thing at a time. The unicorn... Wait, let me just go over that a little bit. I'm afraid you'll... Okay, I'm sorry. The unicorn was suddenly aware that every animal in the midnight carnival was awake, making no sound, but watching her. In the next cage, the harpy began to stamp slowly from one foot to another. Hurry, the unicorn said. Hurry! Schmendrick was already fitting a key into the snickering lock. At his first attempt, which failed, the lock fell silent. But when he tried another key, it cried out loudly, "Ho ho! Some magician! Some magician!" It had Mommy Fortuna's voice. Ah, turn blue, the magician mumbled, but the unicorn could feel him blushing. Okay. He twisted the key, and the lock snapped open with one last grunt of contempt. Schmendrick swung the cage door open wide and said softly, "Step down, lady. You are free." Yay! The unicorn's free. Anyway, what was that? Yeah. "Step down, lady. You are free." The unicorn stepped lightly to the ground, and Schmendrick the magician drew back in sudden wonder. "Oh," he whispered. He was different when there were bars between us. You looked smaller, and not as... Oh my. She was home in her forest, which was black and wet and ruined because she had been gone so long. Someone was calling to her from a long way off, but she was home, warming the trees and waking the grass. Then she heard Ruch's voice, like a boat bottom gritting on pebbles. "Okay, Schmendrick, I give up. Why is a raven like a writing desk?" The unicorn moved away into deepest shadow, and Ruch only saw the magician as the empty dwindled cage. Anyway, his hand jumped into his pockets, came away again. "Why, you thin thief," he said, grinning iron. "She'll string you on barbed wire to make a necklace for the harpy." He turned then and headed straight for Mommy Fortuna's wagon. "Run!" Run! The magician said. He made a frantic, foolish, flying leap and landed on Ruch's back, hugging hugging the dark man's dumb and blind with his long arms. They fell together, and Schmendrick scrambled up first, his knees nailing Russ's shoulders to the earth. Okay. Barbed wire, he gasped. You pile of stone, you waste, you desolate. I'll stuff you with misery till it comes out of your eyes. I'll change your heart into green grass, and I'll show you love into a sheep. You'll turn into a bad poet with dreams. I'll set all your toenails growing inward. You mess with me. Ruch shook his head and sat up, hurling Schmendrix 10 feet away. What are you talking about? He chuckled. You can't turn cream into butter. The magician was getting to his feet, but Russ pushed him down and sat at him. I never did like you, he said pleasantly. You give yourself airs, but you're not very strong. Heavy as night, his hands closed in on the magician's throat, and he's strangling the magician. That's fine. He's strangling the magician. No, honestly, I can't tell whether this is a kid's book sometimes because the writing definitely doesn't seem for kids, and yeah, Ruch is strangling Schmendrick. I love this story. It's great. I love it. Alright, where was I? I'll just go back. Okay. Heavy as night, his hands closed on the magician's throat. The unicorn did not see. She was out of the farthest cage, where the manticore growled and whimpered and laid flat. She touched the point of the horn to the lock, and was gone to the dragon's cage without looking back. One after another, she set them all free: the satyr, Cerberus, the Midgard serpent. Their enchantments vanished as they felt their freedom. Their enchantments vanished as they felt the freedom, and they leapt and lumbered and slithered away into the night. Once more a lion, an ape, a snake, a crocodile, and a joyous dog. None of them thanked the unicorn, and she did not watch them go. Only the spider paid no mind when the unicorn called softly to her through the open door. Arachne was busy with a web, which looked to her as though the Milky Way had begun to fall like snow. The unicorn whispered, "Weaver, freedom is better! Freedom is better!" But the unicorn fled unhearing up and down her iron loom. She never stopped for a moment, even when the unicorn cried, It's really very attractive, Arachne, but it's not art." You know what? I'm gonna use that sentence in the future. It's really attractive, but it's not art. I'm going to use that one day. That I don't think that was meant to be funny, but I found that funny. I'm going to use that. It's really attractive, but it ain't art. Anyway, the new web drifted down the bars like snow. When the wind began, the spider web blew across the unicorn's eyes and disappeared. The harpy had begun to beat her wings, calling her power in, as the crouching wave draws sand and water roaring down the beach. A bloodshot moon burst out of the clouds, and the unicorn saw her, swollen gold, her streaming hair kindling, the cold, slow wings shaking the cage. The harpy was laughing. In the shadow of the unicorn's rage, Ruch and Schmendrick were on their knees. The magician was clutching heavy rings, the heavy ring of keys, and Ruch was rubbing his head and blinking. Their faces were blind with terror as they saw the rising harpy, and they leaned together in the wind. It blew them against one another, and their bones rang. The unicorn began to walk towards the harpy's cage. Schmendrick the magician, tiny and pale, kept opening and closing his mouth at her, and she knew what he was shrieking, though she could not hear him. "She will kill you! She will kill you! Run, you fool! While she's still a prisoner! She will kill you if you set her free!" But the unicorn walked on, following the light of her horn, until she stood before Celiano, the Dark One. For an instant, the icy wings hung silent in the air, like clouds, and the harpy's old yellow eyes sank into the unicorn's harp and drew her closer. Yeah. I will kill you if you set me free, the eyes said. Set me free. The unicorn lowered her head until her horn touched the lock of the harpy's cage. The door did not swing open, but the iron bars did not thaw into starlight. But the harpy lifted her wings, and the four sides of the cage fell slowly away and down, like the petals of some great flower waking at night. And out of the wreckage And out of the wreckage the harpy bloomed, terrible and free, screaming, her hair swinging like a sword. The moon withered and fled. The unicorn heard herself cry out, not in terror but in wonder, "Oh, you are like me!" She reared joyously to meet the harpy's stoop, and her horn leaned up and the horn leaned up to the wicked hand. The harpy struck once, missed, and swam away. Her wings clanging, and her breath warm and stinking. She burned overhead, and the unicorn saw herself reflected on the harpy's bronze breast, and felt the monster shining from her own body, and they circled one another like a double star. And under the shrunken sky there was nothing real but the two of them. The harpy laughed with delight, and her eyes turned into the color of honey. The unicorn knew she was about to strike again. The harpy folded her wings and fell like a star, not at the unicorn, but beyond her, passing so close that a single feather drew blood from the unicorn's shoulder, bright claws reaching for the heart of Mommy Fortuna, who was stretching out her own sharp hands as though to welcome the harpy home. "Not alone!" the witch howled triumphantly at both of them. You never could have freed yourselves alone. I held you." The harpy reached her, and she broke like a dead stick and fell. I think that the witch died. I think. Wait, let me just look at the comments very quickly. Have I seen the movie The Last Unicorn? No, I have not seen the movie The Last Unicorn. I have not. Actually, I don't really know much about the story. All I know is that later on she turns into a human and meets this adopted prince. And she finds out that, and she finds out where all the unicorns were and whatever. But I've never seen the movie. So, yeah, this is like my first time like reading it and whatever. It's my childhood, but now I realize it's kind of dark. It is kind of dark. That's why I keep wondering, is this book made for kids? I'm not sure if it's made for kids. Like, the writing is pretty confusing for kids to understand in some way. With the whole message of fiction and reality. Oh yeah, and the fact that, I think the harpy grabbed Mommy Fortuna's heart, and Ruch was strangling the magician. I love this story already. Well, I've been loving this story, but now I'm really loving this story. Anyway, I'll continue. Okay, where was I? Blah, 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 blah. I'll just reread that sentence. Then the harpy reached her, and she broke like a dead stick and fell. The harpy crouched? Yeah, the harpy crouched on her body, hiding it from sight. Yeah, the witch is dead. And the bronze wings turned red. The unicorn turned away. Close by, she heard a child's voice telling her that she must run. She must run. It was the magician. His eyes were huge and empty, and his face, always too young, was collapsing into childhood as the unicorn looked at him. "No," she said. "Come with me." The harpy made a thick, happy sound that melted the magician's knees, but the unicorn said again, "Come with me." And together they walked away from the midnight carnival. The moon was gone, but the moon was gone, but to the magician's eyes, the unicorn was the moon, cold and white and very old, lighting his way to safety, or to madness. He followed her, never once looking back, even when he heard the desperate scrambling and skidding of heavy feet, the boom of bronze wings, and Ruch's He followed her, never once looking back, even when he heard the desperate scrambling and skidding of heavy feet, the boom of bronze wings, and Ruch's interrupted scream. Well, I guess Ruch died too. Fun. He ran, the unicorn said. You must never run from anything immortal. It attracts their attention. Her voice was gentle and without pity. Never run, she said. Walk slowly, and pretend to be thinking of something else. Sing a song, say a poem, do your tricks, but walk slowly, and she may not follow. Walk very slowly, magician. So they fled across the night together, step by step, the tall men in black and the horned white beast. The magician crept as close to the unicorn's light as he dared, for beyond it moved hungry shadows, the shadows of the sounds that the harpy made as it destroyed the little there was to destroy of midnight carnival. But after sound followed them long after these had faded, following them into morning on a strange road, the tiny, dry sound of a spider weeping. And that was the end of chapter 3. And I think I should stop there, because yeah, this was fun. I'm definitely doing this again. I am definitely doing this again. This was really fun, honestly. I don't even know how long it's been. But yeah, so that is the first 3 chapters of the Last Unicorn. I'm definitely 100%. I am definitely 100% reading this a little bit more. It's an animated movie. Yeah, I know it has an animated movie, but I want to read the book, so I'm just gonna put a bookmark. I have 2 bookmarks because I want to bookmark a specific part of the book that I've seen, and I'm like, ugh, that's a beautiful part. I'm definitely. But yeah, that is the first 3 chapters of the Last Unicorn. And when will I read the next few chapters? Maybe tomorrow. Beats me. Depends on time, honestly. So yeah. Okay, one thing I'm wondering is, should I leave this stream public? I guess I could. I don't know. Maybe. If you guys feel like that's a good idea. What do you guys think? Should I leave it should I leave it public? I don't know, so I guess y'all could treat it like an audiobook or something. I don't think it's good enough for an audiobook since I keep rereading stuff because my dumb brain has a stroke every couple of paragraphs, but so that's what I was wondering. I'm contemplating whether I should have it like that, but you know what? I mean, yeah. So, I'm glad you're enjoying the story. I'm really enjoying the story, honestly. Oh man, I love the escape. I love when Schmendrick is all like, yeah, I know you're a unicorn. I love those scenes. And I am surprised by how dark the story turned out to be. But you know what? I'm all for that darkness, alright? Like, one of my favorite books is freaking Mice of Mice and Men. I like dark and depressing stuff, so. Anywho, I think this should be it. I think I'm done. So, yeah, thanks for sticking